Not sure. I think we're live. I don't think there's no intro going.
Okay.
Well, good evening, folks. This is a Mad Painter, and this is Open Canvas. I guess that was a fail on the intro. We got a return guest tonight. I think you're going to enjoy it, and I'm going to go ahead and let Mark introduce him and get the show on the road.
All righty, here we go. Jeff Woolwine, a UFO enthusiast and ancient culture researcher, is back with us tonight to discuss some latest findings and sightings around the South Mountain, Arizona area. Welcome, Jeff. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you guys for having me on. It's great to be here.
Yeah. Well, let's see. I think you were on at the end of June. So
yeah,
it sounds like you had some new experiences over the summer. So what's going on?
Well, in studying UFOs and watching, as the world progresses over the years, it really seems like when things progress as far as, like wars, we're having the whole Middle East over there is really inflamed right now in wars. And it seems like whenever things start escalating really bad here on planet Earth, that's when these things usually, come out. It seems like they like to watch what's going on, or they get upset. So I've noticed that over the last at least a year or so, things have been really picking up. Not only here in Arizona, but from all over the world. And I'm still working on a video camera, but I have been getting some sightings. And it hasn't been anything too major, because right now I'm not living by the mountain. Now, all the sightings that I was getting was close to the mountain. And I was getting some awesome footage by the mountain. But here, it seems like, let's go back a little bit further. It seems like I didn't find UFOs. UFOs found me. I mean, I'm just a regular person, just watching the sky, and I'm seeing these things in the sky, and I'm trying to figure out what they are. So pretty much it doesn't matter where I go, I'm always seeing these things in the sky. And so right now, all I'm seeing, and this is what we can predict right now, all I'm seeing right now is these little white orbs. And if you go Google search on YouTube and things like that, you can find a lot of orb sightings, not only here in the United States, but from around the world. And that seems to be the pattern. Watching these things over the years, tracking them by South Mountain in Phoenix, Arizona, I come to find out that they really follow the sun. They follow the sun along with the fault lines or energy lines. Some people like to call them ley lines. It seems like when the sun and the ley lines align together, the Indians like to say that it opens up a doorway for these things, for these AKA UFOs. And that seemed to be the case out here in Phoenix. Back in 2005, I was really catching them, right before the equinox, right after the equinox, and right before the solstice and right after the solstice, And that was the pattern. And in studying the rock art out here, the holocoms, it seemed like they carved their sightings on these rocks out here to record what they were seeing, because they didn't have video cameras back then. They had stone boulders to record their sightings. And this is the reason why we find rock art on certain parts of the mountain, and then we don't find rock art on other parts of the mountain, is because, in the places that we do find the rock art, this is where the sighting happened at. This is the special place. This is where the spirits, originally come and go from, according to the Native Americans. And in doing so, they carved these spirals. Now, the light and shadows effects on South Mountain, the Indians are very intelligent. They were able to align these rocks and carve these spirals, some going clockwise, some going counterclockwise. We'll go into that here in a minute. And they would put a heavy stone boulder, or they would totally take a huge rock face or huge rock wall, and they would totally carve into it. And every summer solstice and every equinox, things like that, if someone get in the right position, it would cast a shadow on these rocks. And it would cast a pyramid, what looks like a pyramid shadow, and it would either go through the spiral or going out of the spiral. In studying this, it seems like, this is telling us this is when these things are going to be here, and this is when these things aren't going to be here. Now, some archaeologists want to argue with this and say, well, this is the time when we plant corn. This is the time to start the harvest. Well, I kind of disagree with that. I think if you have an open mind to this, and I think once you start seeing these things in the sky and you follow the sun and you follow, the pattern, it turns out that these things are, following the sun and tracking the shadows, the light and shadow effects. So, excuse me. In watching this, it really amazed me, because going into this, I'm thinking, well, excuse me, how are these things, coming and going? At first I'm thinking, oh, this is a big spaceship, with guys inside it, and they're coming from another planet. Going into this is what I'm thinking. Coming out of this and still into it, my mindset is completely different. It's completely changed. The things that I've seen, the things that I've recorded, and you can find my sightings on Petroglyphs from the Sky YouTube channel, isn't a spacecraft at all. To me, it seems like another living creature, another life form. And it just amazes me on how these things are actually coming and going from the mountains out here. Are you still there?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
You think these spiral petroglyphs are actually doorways to another dimension, then?
Yeah, here's the thing. Watching these things and studying them, one day I'm watching Channel 8, one of the public access channels out here, and they're doing a tour on South Mountain, and the tour guide's name was Dave Morris, and he was from the Pueblo Indian Art Museum, and I saw him on television, and he's doing a rock art tour out there, and he's explaining some of the petroglyphs out there. And the guests or one of the tourists are like, hey, this stick figure guy is looking like he's looking up at something in the sky. And Dave was quick to say, oh, yes, this is part of the interpretation. This could be one interpretation that our ancestors saw things in the sky and recorded it on the rocks there. Well, watching this, a big light bulb went over my head, and I said, wait a minute. We have strange lights in the sky. Now we have strange walkings out there on the mountains out here. There's got to be a connection. And my son interrupted me. Sorry. And there's got to be a connection to this. So I called up. I called up Dave, and I was like, hey Dave, I saw you on television. Can you do an interview with me? And just a minute there.
I'll tell you, this is something. I've always thought there was more to these petroglyphs than what is normally associated with them.
Yeah, so I got a hold of Dave, and I did tell him who I was because in 2004, my son and I was going out to Mesa Community College, and we're standing up there on a big grandstand, and we're watching these lights. We're doing these formations out there, and I'm calling up the news. Hey, is anybody seeing these lights? This is the summer of 2004, and nobody got back with me until about maybe a month later, and they're like, yeah, we got to do a news story. Well, I ended up doing like 4 or 5 news stories in the year 2004. And the end result was I'm seeing flares in Tucson, about 106 miles away. when these things were clearly, you know, not even 150 miles away, but only about a mile or two away from us. And so in studying these things, I come to find out that, you know, they're attracted to mountains. Well, getting back to Dave, I was asking Dave, you know, can we do a tour? You know, and he's like, sure. And I didn't tell him who I was. I didn't tell him what I was all about. I just told him, hey, I'm doing a documentary on the petroglyphs. You know, could you explain to me all the petroglyphs out here? And he's like, yeah, sure. So he went out there and he taught me all these spirals, and he taught me, like, we saw some 6 figures of giants. And one thing that really shocked me, one thing that really got to me at the time was he was like, okay, these spirals, you know, are representing doorways, you know, for these spirits, you know. And he's saying, you know, more than likely when we see these spirals, it's next to a crack in the rock. And he's saying that this is the emergence point, you know, some of these cracks in the rock, you know, either the ground here, the crack in the rock, or it all depends on the way the spiral ends up, could be in the sky there. And at the time I'm thinking, well, how the heck can a spacecraft come and go, you know, from a little rock like that, you know? Until about a week later, until I started seeing them, you know, until one came down out of the sky. And it was kind of neat looking, man. You know, he was kind of solid, and it was like a white orb. And as he ascended down onto the mountain, he started to change. You can kind of see through him. He kind of like transparent or whatnot. You could see through him until all of a sudden he just dissolved into the mountain in there. He just like disappeared into the mountain. And about a half an hour, about a mile or two away, 3 leaves, a 3-orb leaf right shortly after that. You know, so I was amazed, you know, I was like, holy cow, you know. And so in that minute brought me back to Dave, you know. Dave was saying, well, it's an emergence point for these creatures, you know, for these things. And I'm like, holy cow, you know, he's got to be right on this. So going out there, you know, I'm expecting a crop circle. I'm expecting some kind of evidence, you know, because I saw it go down. The video camera recorded it go down. Something went down out there. So let's go check it out. And I didn't find anything, no crop circles, no nothing. But what I did find was a petroglyph with a 6-figure guy looking up at the same object that I saw in the sky a few days prior. You know, and then that's when, you know, it really hit me. Wait a minute, you know, these are actually UFO sightings. There's cars up here. And the more I looked into it, the more I studied it, you know, like I said, we found giants up there. There's plenty of evidence that giants were here in Phoenix. I found a lot of rock formations out there that couldn't explain you know, how they got there. I mean, big, huge boulders and things. I mean, just like big plates. And like I found a few tombs out there that you can see it on my Facebook page there, Petroglyphs in the Sky and Jeff Woolwine. And you can see a lot of photographs of the rock art. And one of them is this tomb. And I believe that from what the petroglyphs say, because I mean, there's a lot to go over. There's a lot of information, and I'm sorry if I'm skipping. But one of the interpretations out here is the lizard people. The lizard people came up out of the sand world, and they taught these Indians how to survive, how to live. And they grew their tail back, and they went back down into the sand world and promised to return someday. And that seemed to be the story out here. And this tomb, it has what looks like a lizard guy, and he's laying down, suggesting that it could be a lizard guy that's entombed inside of South Mountain. Now, not only is there a government seal on top of that tomb, which you can see, you can also, they painted a big circle that you can see from space, you can see from the sky. And, of course, it's the entrance is going into a pyramid hill formation. This is very significant, because I believe that the pyramids, whether they're natural or they're man-made, represent, you know, energy stocks. You know, like the pyramids out there in Egypt. You know, it's energy markers. It's for the ley lines, you know. And this tomb is going in, you know, to this pyramid rock formation here. So, wow, there's a lot to go over. Is there any questions? I mean,
oh, yeah. Yeah, Jeff. When you're on the tour with Dave, you have on your website channel all kinds of petroglyphs, and one of the petroglyphs that really caught my attention was the stick figures without heads. Did Dave have an interpretation, or what do you think those petroglyphs mean?
Well, does it look like a person without a head, or does it look like maybe a life form, another living creature?
It was some kind of humanoid-looking figure without a head. Is there a translation for?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I'm aware of. I'd have to look at that rock art to try to figure out what the artist was trying to talk about there. But that's another thing, like I said, going into this, I'm thinking spaceships orbiting from Mars, and watching it, this is something completely different. And studying it, not only studying UFO investigations, but also some of these biblical scrolls, it talks about these things. The Bible talks about these things. When we look at Genesis 6, it says these things were cast down to the earth. And the men at that time worshipped these things. And from there they bore giants. Well, holy cow, that's the same story on the mountains out here. It's really fascinating because we read it in the text, and then we go out there on the mountains and we actually see the photograph of what the texts are talking about. That's the key here. That's what's really fascinating me, is the rock art matches some of the biblical scrolls that we read.
Jeff, when you've been talking with Dave the tour guide or Clifford Mahudi, or the Zuni tribe or Apache, just the different cultures who live in the area, do they have similar stories about these UFO sightings or lizard people, or are they different?
It seems like it's not. It seems like it's the same story. It's just told a little different all over the world. When we talk about the India, when we look at the India and the Vietnamese, it's the same kind of interpretation, just told a little bit different. Same story, it's just told a little bit different. Same thing, right?
Yeah, a little bit like the biblical flood story, and you find the same story told in South America.
Absolutely.
Do the Native Americans there worship these things, or do they just respect them as another living entity? The Holocom, let's do a little bit of history on that. Holocom is a Pima word. The Pimas consider themselves ancestors to the Holocom, and the Holocom mean the people who had vanished, the people who got taken away, the people who are no longer, the people who are gone. Okay? Now, this is interesting, all right? The archaeologists, want us to believe, well, the Holocom left because it got too hot and they migrated somewhere else. Okay, if that's true, where'd they go? We can't find them anywhere. They just up and vanished. They disappeared from the Valley of the Sun. And when we go out there and we look at the rock art shows some of these creatures, some of these flying serpents, some of these orbs, actually picking people up and carrying them away. All right? And when you dig into this topic and when you talk to some of these Native Americans, they will tell you that the devil came from the east and took these people away. Okay? Now, this is significant, all right? And in going into this, the Holocom, from what I understand, they weren't sun worshippers,
but they feared that the sun was a tyrant god. Okay, and these creatures was their angels or whatnot. They're God, just like Quetzalcoatl. Same thing we find in Mexico. It's the same thing we find here in Phoenix, Arizona. Matter of fact, we find Mayan and Aztec rock art along with the Holocom rock art out here. So the Mayans and the Holocom were actually interacting together at that time. And same thing. We have sacrifice in Mexico, and we have sacrifice out here on South Mountain. I have found 3 altars that has been performed sacrifice on for these creatures, I believe, that we're seeing in the sky today. And you notice how I call them creatures now. I don't call them UFOs. I don't call them little green guys. I call them creatures because this is what I believe they are, from what I've witnessed and from what I've recorded, and from what I'm seeing all over the world, all over the United States. It's the same thing. We have these flying serpents. We have these flying orbs. And then sometimes they get really crazy. And there's that one video of the day that made in 2005 here in Phoenix, Arizona that I filmed. And he looked like a big black spider. Okay, he's crazy looking. When you slow down the film, I have still photographs on my Facebook page. And it's very clear, detailed photographs of this thing. And in a couple frames, it even looks like it's lizard skin. All right? So I don't think that what we're seeing here in Phoenix is a spaceship, but another living creature. Okay? And the Holocoms actually performed sacrifice for these creatures, One interpretation was, when we go out there and we examine the South Mountain area, I mean, it wasn't all dry and desert like this. We had beautiful waterfalls. I mean, there was tons of water here. I mean, it looked like it was like a tropical landscape, but then all of a sudden it all dried up and everything went all dead,
Do you know who Jose Escamilla is?
I've heard of him, yeah.
He talks about the skyfish.
Yes,
I was just wondering if you knew of him, because he believes that some of these things are alive too.
That's correct. And I think in 2005, I had a lot of people laughing at me and telling me, dude, you can't be saying creatures. Like when I was doing a History Channel, they were telling me, look, you can't say creatures, on the air. You have to say UFO. They're like, the public isn't ready for this yet, Jeff. He's like, you're filming some crazy stuff out here that people haven't seen yet.
I don't know. Over 100,000 people a year disappear in the United States. They might be food.
that could be right. Mm-hmm. And so now, go ahead.
Okay. Jeff, I was just wondering if you thought that these creatures were closer to the Nephilim than UFOs, since it seems like they may have a more evil intention.
Right. Yes, I'm glad you're catching on, because I believe that these Phoenix lights, what we're seeing in the sky, is, because a lot of people are like, oh, the UFOs are going to here to help us, Well, I don't think that's the case here. I think some of them, because I believe that there's different races, different types. I believe that we have good ones out here, and then we have bad ones out here. Just like what we read in the Bible. For instance, how Moses was leading the Egyptians out of Egypt? Well, it clearly tells us that Moses was following a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. All right? Now, when we read the book of Numbers, it says sometimes that pillar of cloud wouldn't move for a whole year. And the Israelites pitched camp until that thing in the sky started moving. So actually, it wasn't really Moses that led them out there. It was Moses following a UFO.
And then we come to the conclusion of this. A UFO came down, picked up Moses, took him away, and it wasn't Moses that led the people into Israelite, into the promised land. It was this thing in the sky. They followed that thing in the sky into the promised land. So the Lord uses some of these creatures for his bidding, for his, to help mankind out. You see where I'm going with this?
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think, like the bad ones here, like these lights and these flying serpents and things. Okay, now it's really interesting. I mean, this is a theory. It's just a guess because I don't know, But this is what I'm coming to the conclusion. This is what I'm trying to work out, trying to figure out. Is when we read First Thessalonians, it talks about this rapture that everybody's waiting for. All right. Now, when things get tough, the Lord will catch these people and take them up to the sky, and they will be judged. They'll meet the Lord in the sky to be judged. Well, the thing that really caught my eye, that caught my attention, was will be caught up. They will be caught up. They will be caught and taken up. And that really took me back to that, interpretation on what happened to the Holocauns, is they were taken up and carried away. So maybe at that time it was a type of rapture for the Holocaust. You see where I'm going with this?
Okay, so the biblical prophecy of the rapture has precedence in other cultures.
Right. Mm-hmm. That's correct. That's right. And so, okay, let's just say that's true. All right, let's just say like a big war is coming, and this could explain the reasons why they're not landing on the White House lawn. They're not landing and they're not talking to us yet. They're letting us know that they're here. They're letting us see them. They're letting us record them. But they're not coming down and talk to us. Why? And I believe it's because we don't need them.
We're not deporting aliens anymore lately.
I'm sorry?
I was being facetious. We're not deporting aliens anymore.
Okay. You're going to mess me all up. Okay, where was I? All right, so if these things we'll be caught up. So, and how come they haven't contacted us yet? It's because we don't need them. If the Holocaust story is to be true, that the Holocaust didn't know how to survive, and the lizard people came around to help them out, well, that could explain the reasons why they're not contacting us yet, is because we don't need them. But if there's no food, if there's no water, if there's a big Holocaust somewhere, and there's only a few of us left, and we see these things in the sky, and one comes down, and he turns himself into a man, and which the petroglyphs out there clearly show, because these things are their shape shifters. All right, they like to take the shape of animals. They like to take the shape of dogs. They like to take the shape of humans. All right, so let's say one comes down, he turns himself into what looks like a man, and he says, "Look what I can do! I have all these magical powers. I can feed you. I can clear up the world. Worship me." You see?
That sounds like the Antichrist.
Right. Absolutely. You nailed it. That's where I'm going with this. This is what I think could be going on, is this is holy stuff. This is biblical stuff that we're seeing here. All right? Now, there could be little green guys out there from Alpha Centauri. I have no idea. I haven't seen them yet. I haven't seen a spaceship yet. I'm seeing these creatures. You see? So who knows? Maybe, things are being blown.
It could actually look like they're metallic and metal,
right.
Act like they're the UFOs.
Yes. Sure. Yeah, I think when somebody, it really bothers me lately, because they call these orbs crafts, They call these long tubular things, these cigar-looking things, crafts. But what if that's the creature? What if that's the living creature in itself? What if he's a different type he's higher power. He's higher than human. All right, he's
on a different.
I hate to say the word angel, but yeah, you see, I mean, it's that creature. You see a light out there. You see 5 lights out there. It's not some cloaked ship with lights coming out. No, each light is the creature. All right, you're watching that creature, and that creature is watching you because it knows who's watching them and who's not. And this is how they're getting away in our Phoenix skies without everybody seeing them. Because they come in real soft, real quiet. They don't make any noise. They don't cause any attention. But where are they? They're hovering over these mountains. And why? And what for? It's because these mountains have these fault lines in them that generate energy. And in 2004, in some of these things, in this spot, it turns out that this spot on each side of South Mountain, those of you that are familiar with Phoenix, Arizona, you can find a power plant out here among Ray Road. All right? It's a huge power plant. Okay, in 2004, okay, now I've seen photographs. We have a nuclear powered Verde power plant out here, okay, right outside of Phoenix out here. Now, I think back in the early 90s, I've seen photographs of lights hanging over this nuclear powered Verde power plant, okay? And I think, we're skywatchers and UFO hunters aren't the only ones watching these things. The government or somebody else is watching these things too, and they're way ahead of all of us, all right? They are so way ahead. They know what is going on. They know what is here. And they have the technology to know when they're going to be here and when they're not going to be here, all right? Me, it's just a guess. I was following them. That first year they were here, hey, that was cool. The second year they came back, same spot. There's got to be a pattern. That's it. But what the government is doing, well, whoever's watching them, I believe that they have right before the energy happens, I believe they're able to pick up that, an infrared or something. But I'm going ahead of myself here. So this power plant in 2004, these lights were hovering over this electrical power plant, and it skywatchers here in Phoenix, Arizona, and most likely around the United States, whenever the summer rolls around and the government says, hey, we need to shut down some of these little nuclear power plants and turn on the electrical power plants, I think that's the time to start going out to these electrical power plants and start watching them. Because I believe that, I'm going ahead of myself again, because in 2004, when these lights were hanging over the power plant, it shut down the grid. Right? Is this a coincidence? It blew up a whole grid here in Phoenix, Arizona. It shut down hospitals, it shut down offices, it shut down houses. I mean, they had to pull a whole new power grid from an 18-wheeler from California. It took a month to get here. Okay? Now, was it because of these UFOs over the power plant? Did they absorb this energy enough to take too much and, shut it down? I believe so. And I believe the government thinks this also. And I think that if they have the capability of shutting down the electrical power plant, what if they do something to a nuclear power plant? All right? That could really throw things, through a loop here. So I think the government is smart. They know the time is right. They know these things are coming. They know they're here to feed on the energy. So they shut down some of the nuclear sites and they turn on the electric just to be on the safe side. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting.
Yes, it is.
I wouldn't doubt that there are regular UFOs from other places in our galactic reality here, but I would not doubt that some of these things are living creatures that are just on a different vibrational level or from a different dimension.
Oh, yeah. They've already found at least, that I'm aware of, 3 planets of Earth-like planets.
Oh, they've...
So let's just say that there's another life form out there, right? Uh-huh.
Yeah, I just wonder if there's been an increase in sightings in just the last couple hours because of the equinox tonight.
Okay, here's the thing.
Wait a minute. The equinox is tonight?
I think.
Yeah, we're going into the fall.
Balance.
Yeah, we're hitting that fall. We're hitting that fall equinox. And but here's the thing, okay? sitting by the mountain for those 2.5 years, okay, I was studying the rock art, I was studying the light and shadow effects, and my apartment was in such an angle and in such a position that the sun would go over my apartment and would cast a shadow on my floor through the window sill. And I was able to track the equinox, all the dates on my floor. This is how I track the sun. Just like the holocoms did out there with the rocks. I did it with my floor on the window. Okay? So I marked all the time when I filmed the UFOs. I filmed the UFOs. January, February, March, April, May, June. And then as soon as I get up to these equinox or these solstices, boom, they're gone. All right? And then a week later, they start to shortly but surely come back. All right? Now, from what I've learned, the pattern, when they first come back, it's about a week after the equinox, a week after the solstice, okay? And what we expect to see is little white orbs, all right? Now, as months progress, as days progress until the next equinox or the next solstice, in the middle of these two, equinox and solstice, they get closer and closer and closer, all right? 1 month, the first month they're really high. Second month, they're getting closer. Third month, they're getting closer. Fourth month, they're getting really close. They're right here in our face, okay? They're landing on the mountain, all right? And then when it gets closer to another equinox, it reverses itself. A little bit less, a little bit less, a little bit less, until a week before the equinox, a week before the solstice, we're seeing little white dots. Until all of a sudden, we don't see anything for 2 weeks, right, during the equinox and the solstice in that time period. And then after that week, it starts all over again. That's the pattern. That's what I've seen from watching them for 2.5 years out there by the mountain. The first year was cool, The second year, when it repeated itself, but there was more of them, that was crazy. What we have going on out here on the mountains is a little mini UFO invasion, and that people really need to be aware of.
Are these different sizes?
Oh yeah, they take the shape. They're able to become as huge as cars, and then come down as small as motorcycles. You know what I mean? They have the capability to make them shrink, to make themselves invisible, to make themselves bigger. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. That's what I was curious if they're,
right?
Or if you're seeing youngins.
Oh no.
Jeff, do you see the triangular ones, or are they just the saucers? I have yet. I've seen creatures that resemble maybe what looks like, your typical saucer, but I'm not ready to say that it's a craft. I'm not ready to believe that that's a craft yet, because I know that they shift shape. 1 minute they look like a spaceship or whatever, and then 1 minute they look like a flying snake or a flying worm, or they turn themselves into an orb. You see? I saw a tubular thing in the sky, and as it turned, the whole thing just turned into like a little ball, a little white ball. So it was a long cigar-shaped looking thing, and as it turned away, it turned into a little white ball. So things like that,
There's been numerous reports of vector-shaped ones all over the world.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
adopted it as part of their logo and almost everything.
Yeah, the V-shaped formation. It's like I said. From what I've seen, from what I've witnessed, from what I've recorded, when we see three lights out there, it's not a triangular craft, but it's just three lights in formation. It's possible that it's either some kind of communication, because I see holes made up there by the holocom in the same formations that I'm seeing these lights do. I see a lightning. Let's take a lightning bolt, for instance. In 2004, we found a beautiful lightning bolt spread out there by the lights. And the next day, we went out there and we saw the exact same formation on the mountain.
but they were carved in holes, so it could be maybe a type of communication, or it could be just a type of formation that they fly in, Another thing that I've witnessed that's really neat is it seems like these things draw off each other, the energy. I've seen one orb go up to another orb, and then all of a sudden a line or a bar or something will connect. And then we have a barbell formation out there. And then the bar will go back into the other one, and then the white one will leave. The other orb will leave, and the white orb will stay motionless.
You might have been witnessing sex.
That could have been too, That could have been too. A lot of people ask me, well, what do you think these things are, And it's like, you know what? This is my theory on it. Just as the oceanographers are finding new species of life beneath the ocean, this is another species of life above the ocean that has always been here. Okay? The Indians knew about it. They carved them up on the rocks. I mean, they told us, they've been telling us about it all these years, ever since the white man came across the Indians, came across the Mexicans. They're telling us, it's flying serpents, it's Quetzalcoatl. We've known about this, but we just blew it off. Right? Been blowing this information up.
Announced that they discovered some kind of bacteria or virus that lives in our upper atmosphere.
Wow, that's news to me. Yeah, I haven't heard that. That's kind of scary.
Jeff, since the western states have been having such a problem with a drought, obviously the water levels have dropped. Have there been any new discoveries on rocks in the riverbeds with really unusual petroglyphs?
That's a good question. That's great. Whenever we get these floods out here during the monsoon, that's when it's the time to go out there to some of these archaeology sites and really examine, some of the rock art, some of the things on the ground, because that's when the evidence really starts to come up, because all this stuff has been buried, and the government knows what's going on out there. The first park ranger of South Mountain, Charles Holbrook, back in the late 30s to early 1940s. He was instructed to protect, some of the tombs out here. The Indians told Charles, the tombs out here. And he was a tour guide also. Now, when he was alive, he had brochures, and he used to pass out these brochures, and he used to do tours to some of these tombs. Until, everything wasn't really a secret back then, until after his death. When he died, everything was covered up. Everything was closed. Everything was put up in the library in the government section, which I accidentally came across a year later after finding all this stuff and saying, look, man, I think this is something different. I'm finding something different out here. I'm finding something completely different out here. And then lo and behold, in this little folder, I find all this information, and it's talking about everything that I found out there. You see, that just confirms everything.
So what do you think's being covered up?
For instance, here's an example. One day, Charles Holbrook. Right now, there's a lot of conflicting stories on the Spanish conquistadors, if they were ever here or not. And some archaeologists will say, well, Marquez de Naza never came this way, but yet we have his inscription out there on the rock of South Mountain. And Holbrook believed in that inscription so bad that the city of Phoenix was going to tear down that rock and put it somewhere else. And Holbrook stopped that, put a gun on the construction workers, and said, "You ain't moving that rock." And the next day, they had a meeting, and they decided that they were going to leave that rock carving there, and they put bars over it the next week over. All right, and there was always rumors back in that day that the Spanish conquistadors had erected these huge crosses, north, south, east, and west. Right, and Holbrook hiking out there I've read his journals. He said he accidentally came across them, and they were huge. And he was explaining that it must have taken a mighty army to erect these crosses with these stones. But he didn't tell anybody about it, because apparently this hill was also the hill that this padre came around when the Holocaust were here. There was two padres that came around. One padre was good, helped the Indians. One padre was bad, ripping off the Indians. And the bad padre, he got dismembered and buried on Padre Hill. And this is where the crosses were erected at. And the story goes that the ghost of the Padre's ghost still walks around this hill, and he leaves footprints in the sand. And all the gold that he stole from the mines, he put in his cave, which was covered up, which was buried, which he took to his grave. He never told anybody where the gold was. But the rumor was that if you ran into his ghost, the ghost would lead you to this cave and would show you where all the gold is. So back to the crosses, Charles Holbrook found this hill, and he found the crosses, but he didn't tell anybody about it for almost a year, until the city of Phoenix was making a new map of South Mountain, and they put that hill on the map. And Charles said, okay, well, you know what, since you guys put that hill there, I'm going to tell you what's there. We have these big crosses out there, and I believe it's from the Spanish conquistadors. Okay, now, back in that time, everybody was still looking for the gold. Everybody was still looking for gold here. Everyone's, looking for tombs. There's a bunch of gold robbers out here looking for those things to dig up. And some people found out about some crosses out there, destroyed the crosses, and started digging, looking for the gold. They didn't find no gold, but they destroyed the crosses. All right, now, it kicked off Holbrook. And he wanted the city of Phoenix to go back out there and fix them and to re-erect them. But the city of Phoenix says, no, we didn't have the money to do this. But if you want to do it, if you and your friends want to do it, you can go ahead and do it. So him and his friends, and he got a bunch of kids together, and he got a bunch of old people together, started erecting these crosses back together. And apparently one of his friends had a heart attack and died on South Mountain erecting these crosses. Now, that's about as far as that story goes until later on down through the years, South Mountain, the east side of South Mountain is very holy to the Holocaust, to the Indians, okay? The east side of South Mountain is more older than the west side. We find more rock art on the east side of South Mountain than we do the west side, okay? And, matter of fact, when you do a Google search, Google map or whatever, of South Mountain Park in Phoenix, Arizona, you'll see golf courses, okay, around the mountain, especially on the east side, all these golf courses. Now, I found a map that explained on what those golf courses used to be there, and it was actually a burial site, burial mound. And what the city of Phoenix did is they removed the burial mounds and in return placed golf courses, okay? And there was two conflicting stories. As time progressed, Holbrook died, stories changed, and to that point, we have two conflicting stories on where this hill is. Some people said Padre Hill is over there. Some people said Padre Hill is over there. And they did that for a reason. They confused people for a reason so nobody would find it. And when they were working on the east side of South Mountain, they were blowing up rocks. They blew up petroglyphs. They're erecting what now stands today as Westler's Roof, a bar and grill that's there today. Now, when that was being erected, when that was being constructed, all the Native Americans here were protesting against the golfers and the construction workers. And they cursed them. They said, death to you guys for disturbing our ancestors, And looking at some of these maps, because we have conflicting old maps, too. They said the Padre Hill is here, and then one map says the Padre Hill is here. Well, I've been to both places. And Padre Hill, the crosses are gone. Okay, and there's no evidence of them anywhere. But and I'm thinking that during that time, I think that they destroyed that hill. They destroyed the crosses when they were putting up the barn grill on the east side. So that's what I mean by covering up the story, because there's a lot of gold out there. There's a lot of tombs out there. You know, a friend of mine got a hold of me on Facebook a few years ago, and we go up there hiking every once in a while. It's a good friend of mine. And we go up there hiking, and he was telling me, his name is Jason, and he was telling me, you know what, when my dad was a kid, he used to play hide and go seek out here in South Mountain Park. And he said he ran into a cave. There was a wash, and he ran into a cave with a big tree, all right, and with a big rock concealing this cave, but there was enough room of a crack for this little kid to squeeze through it. He said that when he did, there were steps going down into a huge tomb, a huge dark opening. And he explained it. He said he saw breastplates of metal armor on the sides of the wall. Now, being a kid, he got scared and he got out of there. Okay, he took off. All right, now he left it. You know, it's been like 70 years now since you know, the kid is you know, Jason's dad now. You know, and so me and Jason went out there, and it took us about a week or so, but I believe we found it. All right, now we found something very significant. And if this story is true, and I think it is, because we found everything that his dad was explaining from 70 years ago, it's still there. And I think what's there is a tomb of one of the Spanish conquistadors, okay? And I would like to go out there and do some investigation, you know, as soon as it cools down. It's really hot out there. It's hot out here in the valley. It's even 10 times hotter on the mountain. So I stay away from the mountains during the summer. But as soon as it cools down, me and Jason, we're going back out there, and we're going to do a little bit of investigating. And hopefully we'll have a discovery of the Spanish conquistadors actually being here, you see?
Oh, that'd be great.
That would be awesome.
Close to our top of the hour break. You want to yell out your website so people can find your YouTubes and stuff?
Well, I'm working on the book, and the website has been down for a little bit because of the book. But you can see all my video sightings on my YouTube channel. It's Petroglyphs in the Sky. You can look under Jeff Woolwine. And you can also find me on Facebook, too. If you have any questions, anything on UFOs, I'd love to see your UFO sightings. I'd love to see everything you discovered and talk about. Facebook is a place to get a hold of me.
Okay, Jeff, we have a question from Heather from the chat room, and she was wondering if you know anything about the hoop dancers and the dances that portray the lizard shape-shifting.
Awesome. Great. Awesome question. That's awesome. Way to go. You know what? Yes. It's really cool. We have, you know, the Native Americans. They do their dances out here. They do their hoop dances. They do the kachina dances. You know, it's expensive to go see them, but it's well worth it to go see it. And it's also helping out the Indian tribes too. So I suggest you go check them out. But in studying this, you know, I've even put on some of my videos, I put, you know, the hoop dancers turning themselves into a snake, walking around like a snake. You know, and then I dubbed it with my flying serpent. You know, it matches. You know, the hoop dancers are doing these balls. They're doing these orbs, you know, in the sky. You know, they have these hoops that represent these orbs, you know. So clearly I believe that, you know, they're representing the things that they saw in the sky in dance. Great question.
Okay. She's thrilled that you are a guest again. So. Oh,
that's great. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you.
I think we'll be going to break in a couple minutes. Let's see. There's the music.
There it is, folks.
I'll save my question the other side of the...
Be right back. I want to remind everybody this is Open Canvas with amadpainter and Mark Eddy, and we're on Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. We're totally listener supported, so if you got a buck or two, we'd sure appreciate it. And you can get a bunch of different offers on our homepage that you can do for donations and receive something in the process. And you ought to check us out. That's how we keep shows like this going on. And I'm really interested in what our guest is talking about tonight. And Mark, I know you got a certain direction you want to lead it, but first I do have to say that our guest did say he'd take a few phone calls, and the number is 347-688-2902. Okay, Mark, I know you want to head it a certain way.
Jeff, as you've walked around these trails, seeing all these petroglyphs, I was wondering if you've seen any of these incised rocks with the carvings that may look like a helmet or a space helmet. It's like some kind of bubble over the person's head. You see that frequently on Ancient Aliens. Have you come across any of the helmeted figures?
Well, I have seen maybe a couple of them that kind of resemble helmets.
Okay, cool.
I know what you're talking about with the Ancient Aliens there. It looks like it's a guy wearing a space helmet or something like that.
Yeah.
And, I think that man has made it to the moon before. I think that it's possible back in those early days, they were able to travel in space, through the help of these beings, For instance, there's a petroglyph out here. We see a lot of barbells formation in the skies out here, a lot of black barbells, a lot of white barbells. And there's a petroglyph out here, and it actually shows a barbell, and there's a stick figure man inside this barbell, and he's kind of looking out a window. And the way the art is depicting is it looks like it's carrying this guy away inside the barbell. So I'm thinking that these helmets, just like, they found that tomb over there in, I think it was the Quetzalcoatl tomb, and the sarcophagus, the stone that was on top of the sarcophagus there, it looked like a guy, and he's flying the spaceship, right? Yeah, isn't that interesting? So I don't believe he's an alien. I believe he's a man with this type of technology that he's able to, to fly around, you see. So I think it was man-made spaceship and not, spaceship from another world that was actually taught, because when you look at the pyramids out there in Egypt, come on, the Egyptians did not make those pyramids. Somebody else, somebody bigger, somebody more advanced, made those pyramids. And when we study, the Bible, even in the book of Solomon, it says the angels built the first temple of Solomon, the first temple on the mount there, and it was huge stones, 2,000-3,000 big old stones, like who's going to be able to move these things? They didn't have cranes back then. Even our cranes still couldn't pick up these stones. So how were they able to be moved? Either the giants picked them up and placed them there, or it was another type of creature, another being, that was able to pick these stones up and place them there. So I believe that, mankind was a lot smarter back then. I think throughout generations, throughout thousands of years, mankind has forgotten his past. We have lost a lot of intelligence over the years. I think our brains are capable of doing a whole lot of stuff that we're just not able to do, anymore. That we're not taught on how to do it. Like ESP and things like this, and moving stuff with our minds and stuff,
I myself fully believe that we've had more than one civilization that has reached above us and has crashed here on the Earth.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I believe the giants were one of the races.
Oh, right. Absolutely. I mean, when you really dig into this topic and you really do your investigations and your studies, you'll be convinced that yes, giants were here, and they're finding giant bones out there, and the government and other people's trying to, just miss them, trying to cover them up, trying to say, oh, they're hoaxes, Photoshop, this and that. But when you study those rocks, and when you study the bones and the corpses, I mean, come on, that's a lot of detail. I mean, I saw this one giant photograph, and it looked like he was in a battle because he's got a big spear or something sticking out of his rib cage and stuff. It's like that's how he was killed. It was like it was a dinosaur's antler or something that was jabbed into his rib. I mean, come on, this is too much detail for Photoshop, you know what I'm saying? This is too much evidence that giants did walk the earth. I mean, heck, South Mountain, like I said, there's there's rock formations out there. I mean, these huge stones that have been placed on top of each other, to erect this opening of this tomb, and when you look at the photographs, you can see the rock and how it was broken up, picked up, and moved and thrown into the spot so you can't get into it anymore. It actually bounces off the other rock there, I mean, and this stone is huge. It's this big. It's got to be at least 1,000 pounds. But obviously, it was supposed to be on the other side of the rock, but somebody broke it up, picked it up, and threw it over there. So, yeah, giants are here.
Okay. Hey, Jeff, is there any way to date the petroglyphs that you've seen? Is there like charcoal rubbed into where the stone was incised? Is there any burials like right underneath the petroglyph?
We really can't date the petroglyphs. There's really no way of dating this rock art. One way I found out on how you can tell if the rock art is old or not is what I've learned is like rock art is kind of like tattoos. The older it gets, the thicker it gets. So if you see a real thick, carving or something, it's been there for a very long time. Especially if it's white. Now, if it's yellow, okay, it's because people are touching it. All right, you're not supposed to touch the petroglyphs. When you go up on the mountains and you see the rock art, just, do some consideration and don't touch them. Because it decreases them a little bit. It makes them it colors them a bit. It makes them yellow. So you find ones that are bright white and hasn't been touched. You find the ones that are yellow and people have been touching them and stuff. And but yeah, there's altars. There's huge stones that have been placed on top of it, especially on the east side of South Mountain. Now, when you do the Google search and you look on the east side of South Mountain, right there where people go in to park their cars and to do hiking, well, off to the south there a little bit, you can see 3 big rock formations. And there's petroglyphs, there's light and shadow effects on them. And I also believe that there's something buried there. They're tombs also. So it's not only, carvings, it's not only telling our past, but there's also something buried there too.
Jeff, have you found any evidence of the insectoid kind of figurines with maybe multiple arms or something that looks like wings? And we already covered some of the reptilian characters.
Yeah, that's a good question. When we look at the Vietnamese, when we look at some of the India art, we see the elephants, with all these arms, like a whole bunch of arms, and then we see these dragon creatures or whatever, these devil creatures with like 6, 7 arms and things. Well, I'm finding the rock art out here too. I'm finding some of the exact same things out here on South Mountain. when we study India and the Vietnamese, it seems like they went to war. There was a war between like maybe the good aliens and the bad aliens, okay? And the legends have it, they say that they had these magical staff weapons, and they were able to shoot these things out of the sky with these magical staff weapons. And whenever they conquered these things, they buried the weapons in certain spots, in certain locations around the globe, because they know one day they're going to have to come back and reuse them to fight these things again. And when I read that story, and I was going here on South Mountain, I found a rock art panel, and it shows what looks like a flying humanoid, a flying serpent. He's like half man, half serpent. He's clearly up in the sky there. And right below him is a six-figure man. He's got 4 arms, and he's holding this staff, and he's shooting at this thing in the sky. Okay? And that just seems to match, story over there in India. So if that's the case, if we had good ones and we had bad ones out here fighting pretty much over us, then let's just say that the magical staff weapons aren't buried around South Mountain also. All right? Maybe some of these tombs hold some of these weapons, hold some of these magical power things, inside these tombs. Who knows? This is what the rock art shows. This is the reason why the government came out here during the CCC in the early 30s and 40s, on how they came in here and they blew up some of the rock art right before World War II. Why did they do that? Why were they blowing up rock art? They didn't need to do that. It's because it's telling a story. It's telling us where these tombs are.
What was the excuse that they used to do it?
Well, it was President Roosevelt's plan. Let's see. I can't remember what he called it, but he hired a whole bunch of young men back during the Depression. I can't remember what they called it now. It's at the tip of my tongue. But they hired a bunch of people, a bunch of kids, and they actually lived up there on South Mountain, and they called it the CCC, the Civil something Corps. Yeah, I can't remember right now. But they actually lived up there on South Mountain. And I got a couple of photographs. Me and Jason went up there last year, and we visited where the CCC was camped at. And they were doing mining. They were mining for gold. They were mining for other elements. They were erecting tabletops and park benches and roofs and things, ramadas. And they were making trails, all right, and they were getting paid to do this, back in the Depression. And Roosevelt, he wasn't able to get around, so his wife was, and it's just possible that his wife came around and learned about all these crazy things down here. They must be worshiping the devil. Oh, they're having sacrifices down here. Oh, the petroglyphs are so hideous. It's scary. Well, we need to do something about this, Well, while we're constructing the ramadas, while we're constructing all the trails and tombs, or trails, why don't we just, blow up some of these rock art, to erase the story? Because in studying the rock art, especially like the animals, okay? Now, the coyotes, we find a lot of coyotes in rock art up there. And they're more than likely facing in the direction of a holy spot, of a sacred spot. And if you follow that coyote, he might lead you to another coyote. He's looking somewhere else. You follow that. That leads you right to a big rock with a big spiral. Either that, you'll find a tomb. All right? So there are clues in here. And another clue is the deer, the antlers, okay? Are representing trails, all right? When we look at the rock art, we're not just supposed to look at the art, but we're supposed to put in the whole landscape, put in the whole background. Because the artist isn't just talking about this one area, he's talking about his whole surroundings, okay? So when we're looking at, these pyramids with a serpent above it, you need to look behind this rock, because right behind that rock, you're going to find 2 pyramid hills, and this is what the Indian is talking about. He's telling us he saw a serpent between these 2 pyramid hills right there. All right? And I think that I lost my train of thought. But
we're talking about the landscape is included in the petroglyph.
Yeah, right. And I forgot where I was going, but oh yeah. So the deers, the antlers, all right. I found this one deer, and the antlers were kind of big, kind of crazy looking. But when I stepped back a little bit and I looked on the hill behind him, the big, huge mountain hill behind it, it comes to find out that the antlers were actually the trail going up the side of the hill. All right, so it was like a type of map. The deer was a map to where some of the sites are. You see, and if little me can figure this out, then anybody going up there with a little dedication, a little bit of knowledge, a little bit of you gotta know what you're looking for, understand this, can figure this out. And I think back then they understood that too, and to keep everything quiet because they don't want people going up there digging for the gold. They don't want people going up there looking for the spirits. They don't want people going up there looking for the tomb. You know what I mean? They want to keep this suppressed. They don't want to tell people, what the archaeologist is crazy because I bought his book. I read his book. It's called Landscape of the Spirits, and he leaves out a whole lot of stuff. He doesn't talk about the tombs that I found up there. He doesn't talk about the Mayan petroglyphs that's out there. He doesn't even suggest that the Mayans were even out there at all. But clearly the rock art and everything else, clearly talks about this. All right? And why is this? It's because him and his team has found most of this stuff and realized what's there. And, if they leave it suppressed, don't ask, don't tell. If we dig it up, then they're going to have to come back and explain it. So let's bury this. Holbrook is gone. So let's bury all the information that he's discovered, and let's start over on South Mountain. And that's pretty much what happened. And they left all the good stuff out. And that's why I'm here today, is I'm here to bring the good stuff back in. And that's what my book is all about. I'm putting in the stuff the archaeologists left out.
So you have a book, or you're writing a book?
Yeah, it's I'm in the process of it. Let's see, that one guy, David, the one guy that claims that he was at Area 51 and he saw the spaceship looking saucers. His name was David. Well, anyway,
I don't know who that is.
Bob Lazar, are you talking about?
Bob Lazar, yeah, that's it. Bob Lazar, okay. Yeah, I recently heard an interview with him a few months ago, and when he first did this, when he first came out with his findings, he was like, oh wow, he was like in the same mindset I was. Hey, I'm out to change the world. Hey, everybody's got to know about this, But as years progress, as things go on in your life, there's other priorities that you have to take care of. And that's pretty much what happened to me. That's the reason why my show isn't up anymore, is because I had to really take care of them. I had a lot of family problems, so I kind of put things, on the back burner for a few years. But now everything is good, and I'm ready to get back into the game and ready to finish the book. And in the process of these last 5-6 years, I have been doing a lot of work on the book. But like I said, there's so much information, so much to tell. The Indians had 1,000 years, 2,000 years to do all this. It could take me a long time to put it all together. But when it is all together, it's going to be fantastic. And I can't wait till it's out there. And I'm hoping that I can get it done by the end of this year, and if not, the beginning of next year.
It sounds to me like you've been doing quite a bit of research and getting your hands dirty in the process too.
Oh, right, yeah. It's just not exciting. It's an adventure. You just can't say, oh, look at that. What is it? Okay, let's go back to work. No, you have to go deeper into it, man. You have to find out what it is. You have to get your hands dirty. You have to go out there in the field. It shocked me. 1997 lights, came around. 10 years go by, and no one even has to even hesitate to looking at the rock art on there in South Mountain. 10 years go by, and everybody's like, oh, what's the light? Oh, it's flared. Oh, okay, let's move on. No, man, there's more to it,
Has there been anything on the north side found?
You know what there is? Like in the middle of South Mountain, that's where Holbrook Trail is. There's about 3 tombs that are there, and I see orbs out there all the time. It's really neat when you're out there and you're on the pyramid and you see an orb, a couple of them above the head there. And that's kind of like in the middle of South Mountain. But, right. You know what? On my Facebook page, I posted, there's these lights, these red lights. Now, that was filmed on the west side, and this is where the Phoenix Light spread happened at. It was on the west side of South Mountain, between South Mountain and the Australian Mountains. The Australian Mountains in Spanish means Star Mountain. Isn't that interesting? And that happens to be the Indian reservation out there. Now, in 1997, when these Phoenix Light spread happened, basically what they did is they chained themselves. They did a link between one mountain to the next mountain. They did a huge pattern, huge V pattern, And then all of a sudden, I think, in my mind, it got blown out of proportion. This spacecraft went from here to there, from one side of Arizona to the next side of Arizona. But in studying this, my theory of it is, you know what? They're following the mountains. They're following the energy, all right? So the top of, let's say, the top of Phoenix, or the top of Arizona, that mountain spread up there around the Grand Canyon and stuff, there's a huge fault line. Lights were seen there, all right? And then the next night, or maybe that same night, they just follow the energy. They jump from mountain to mountain to mountain. And this is how you can follow them, you see? They're following the sun. They're following the energy. All right? And once you figure that out, that's the key on when to see these things and when not to see these things. So when everybody says, a spaceship went over the valley, and we come up with only 4 videos of the Phoenix Lights, I don't get it. Because we could, there was cameras back then. We had video cameras. We had still cameras, Surely we could have took a picture of a craft or something over downtown Phoenix, but that's not what we see. Right? We see a bunch of lights, and where are they? Hovering over the mountains. All right? And that's it. And then they blame that sighting on flares.
Jeff, have you spoken with Dr. Katai recently?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Have you been working with Dr. Katai recently?
No, not recently. I do know her, and I've done at least one lecture, a little lecture with her at one point in time. But we're not close. We're well aware of each other, but that's about as far as it goes.
Oh, okay.
She's a great person. She's an awesome person, great lady. Awesome book. She did a great thing on the Phoenix Lights book there. I suggest people pick it up and read it because it's really fascinating. And she did really good. The only thing that, she left out was the rock art. She didn't do an investigation, that's all. But everything else is awesome.
Well, usually people who are checking out UFOs aren't checking out archaeology sites.
Yeah, that's one of the problems out here. The skywatchers are just, they're watching the skies and they're not really. They haven't really put 2 and 3 days. Yeah, you know what? To be honest with you, there was no ancient aliens before my research came around. Pat Usgart at the time, Pat Usgart, and UFO Magazine, Bill Burns, in 2005, I was actually part of the pilot for the Ancient Aliens show. And me and Jeff Willis and a few other guys, but it was mostly my findings out there. I took Pat up there on the mountain, and they took that demo to California to the History Channel, I guess. And it took a few years. It took a few years for it to hit, but eventually they got their show going on, UFO Hunters, and had a great show. And I ended up doing that show too a few years later. But still, they were telling me, look, Jeff, you're filming some crazy stuff, and the public's not ready for it. You just can't say creatures. You can't say spirits. You gotta say, UFO. You guys so cute, you know, you guys say spaceship, something like that, you know. But yeah, and everybody was like, oh, he's Photoshop, oh, he's hosting this and he's hosting that, and oh no, this Jeff Woolwine, he's another prophet Yahweh, and this and that. You know what, man? Get off that stuff, you know. Go out there and do the research that I've done, you know, and you will come to find out that everything that I'm talking about and everything that I'm seeing and recording, it's there. You know, and I think the only problem that people don't have is they really don't have the time, you know, to go out there and investigate things as much as I do. And that's what I have on my side. I have the time and patience and dedication, you know, to get this story out there. And but now, all right, now, ever since 2005, people are starting to change their minds now. You know, they're starting to say, wait a minute, I'm seeing flying snakes here. You know, I mean, what's going on? You know, I'm getting people all over the United States telling me now, look, I'm seeing crazy things, and I'm afraid to post it because no one's going to believe me. You know, thank goodness you're posting things because I'm seeing the same stuff you're seeing now. And that really makes me happy. That's when I know, hey, that's really cool. You know, because I am verifying what they're seeing. They're not crazy. There is something in the sky, and someone else has filmed it also, and this is what he's come up with. And if you don't believe him, or if you think it's something else, then you go out there and you investigate it the way I did, and you come up with your own conclusion. But this is what I came up with, and this is my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Well, there ain't nothing wrong with that. No.
Yeah,
I'm a firm believer that there is something out there that is alive and does portray itself as more than one particular thing, as in a shape-shifting type deal. The evidence that you have and evidence I've seen from other people and stuff I've seen myself in research brings me to a conclusion that there are UFOs. And there are these things that we see that are alive and that are able to make you think they are whatever they want you to think.
Right. You know, a friend of mine, Julie, on Facebook, she recently emailed me a few days ago, and she was like, you know what, last year, me and my husband was out there on South Mountain, and we saw what looked like a flying snake, and it looked like some orbs, so we couldn't tell if there were drones or not. And it was moving around, not like balloons, but something like different, something you've seen, you know. And I'm like, yeah, you've seen it. You know, that's what they are. That's what they look like. You know, so it's great when someone sees, you know, what I've been talking about all these years.
There's a YouTube out there. I can't remember who done it, but the title of it is UFOs Are From Hell. I suggest everybody check it out because it shows some footage that is really unique that you don't normally see, and they actually show shape-shifting into some of these shapes you're talking about. Sure,
yeah. You know, I mean, like I said, the book tells us these things were cast down. You know, they lived there among us. The Indians say the spirits dwell within the mountains. You know, you can invoke these spirits. I've done it many times. You know, I came across one secret that these petroglyphs, some of them have the power to invoke the spirit. And I found 3 spots out there on South Mountain that you can actually go talk to these petroglyphs, and you'll either see one that day or you'll see one within a week. And it's like you go visit them and they'll come and visit you. One thing is, they're looking for people who are looking for them. Right? Look and you shall find. And it's true. You will. If you go looking for them, you're going to find them. Don't give up. Just because you don't see them that first couple months, first, 6, 7 months, whatever, don't give up. You need to keep going out there. If you found somebody that's filming UFOs on a regular basis, go out there and check it out and go see it for yourself. You know, you make up your mind. You decide what it is. You know? So
I wouldn't mind meeting them, but I'm not going for the probing.
Yeah, I don't know about all that. You know, I mean, come on. You know, I mean,
I can't help myself.
I'm not too sure about all that code and stuff and all. You know, I mean, that fire in the sky, there's evidence guys were, partying.
If they can make you believe they're any particular one shape or another, or can change shape, I'm sure they can put in your mind whatever they want. And, of course, they're going to use your worst fears against you.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah. All these conflicting stories on how these aliens, are programming people, it could be just a ploy from the government, to keep people away from the UFOs, to scare people, because, hey, if the government came out right now and says, you know what, there are creatures, there's another life form out there on the mountains, and they're doing weird stuff, and enough people go out there and realize this, they're going to stop believing in the government, and they're going to want to go contact these things. The president can't fly, the president can't do this, but these things can. You know what I'm saying? I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just said I know most people quit believing in the government a long time ago.
Right. So it's like, they're trying to suppress this. They don't want people to know. I've had white airplanes, white Cessnas, that's what you want to look for. They're not here to investigate the black helicopters and everything like that. They're not here to investigate them. They're not here to do anything like that, make contact. They're there to scare them away. It's really fascinating. In 2004, these lights are, when I was making the news, all right, in 2004, filming the lights out there, all right, that's when these airplanes started to follow me. They would follow me, my son, and my friend, all the way to our lookout point. And then the airplanes would go real high up in the sky, about maybe 2,000 feet. And they would circle right above that power plant there. And then these lights would come in and start doing their heat formation. And then the airplanes would come in and zoom in after them. And when they got within about a few miles away from these lights, the lights would disappear. The light systems would come in and they'd circle that area for about maybe 5 minutes, and then leave, go back up into the sky, and then the lights would return. And it was like a cat and mouse game that whole 2004. All right. Now, when they were telling me I'm seeing flares, I'm like, no, these things were at the mountain. I moved to the mountain. That's when the black helicopters started following me around. And every time I was up there on the mountain, there goes a black helicopter. And I lived close enough to that mountain that I could see the black helicopters, flying around the mountain, sometimes being stationary in one spot. And then the helicopter would leave, and like 15 minutes later, a UFO would leave from that very same spot. And this is what I was talking about earlier. I've seen these white Cessnas with these little black domes on the bottom of them, and I think it's like a type of infrared. And I think when, like, the Indians call them doors, and I think when these things is about to happen, when something's about to happen out there on the mountain, you're able to see it on infrared. Maybe the rays, maybe they're, some kind of heat wave or something. But something alerts these airplanes, something alerts these helicopters. It's like they know something's going to happen over there. And they fly over there, and they try to keep them suppressed. They try to keep them from not coming out, But the helicopters can't stay there forever. The helicopters eventually got to leave. And as soon as the helicopters leave, there comes the UFO, So it's really interesting. I've had black helicopters trying to intimidate me. I've filmed them. It's on my YouTube page. They stare right at my window. I've had them fly back and forth across the mountain and then fly right at me, right across my apartment, coming right at my window. I'll be outside waiting for the bus. I have a black helicopter swoop down in on me, I give them the bird as it goes by. But, they are. There's somebody out here watching them, And I think what's kind of neat also is there's all kinds of inscriptions out there. There's all kinds of rock art out there. And we're also finding the Freemasons. I'm finding Freemason rock art out there. I'm finding G's. I'm finding scales, I'm thinking that the Freemasons, were out there investigating these things too. In front of this tomb that I'm talking about with this supposed dead lizard guy, who knows? There's Roman numerals that's kind of carved. They're not really carved, but they're like, I don't know what they're made out of, but it's a stone and there's Roman numerals, number 13, I believe it is. All right? Now, I was doing a lecture in Tempe one time, and during the break, somebody came up to me and said, hey, you know what, there's a hill over there. Have you ever been over there? And I'm like, no. And he's like, well, I found Roman numerals over there also. And I'm like, really? I'm like, okay, I'll go check it out. I haven't found them yet. But if that's number 13, then how many more is out there? You see, they were counting them, they were documenting them. You see? So,
well, I wouldn't doubt that they've actually captured some of these and they've used these things for stealth technology.
You know, that's, well, the things that I'm talking about, these surveys and stuff, that's going to be pretty hard to do. But if there is creatures out there, the technology shifts, you know, sure, why not? You know, you can probably shoot one down, one across, whatever, maybe Roswell was true. You know, maybe they did capture some aliens out there. I don't know. All I know is there's conflicting stories on Roswell when actually it was the government satellite spying on the Russians at that time that fell, and the government let everybody believe that it was a UFO crash just to cover up the satellite meant to spy on the Russians. Now that's another story that's out there, you know, that's part of Roswell that's been kind of buried and covered up. So the government puts things out there to try to intimidate us, to try to lead us astray, you know. But who knows, you know?
Jeff, what were some of the Templar inscriptions that you saw?
I think, you know, I got a lot of pictures on Flickr. If you search Flickr, search my name, Patrick West from the Sky, you can see a lot of photographs. I think this photograph is on Flickr. And it's a G. It's a G. I think it's got like it's a pyramid or something like that with a G in the middle of it. And it's next to a tomb. It's carved right there next to what looks like a tomb. You know, you move these huge boulders, that's the opening to this tomb inside. You know, and here's a big G out there. And along with the Roman numerals. You know, I mean, I can't think of, unless the Spanish conquistadors, you know, were carving Roman numerals out there. But I would have to say it was probably the Freemasons, but that's my guess.
Well, you know, those you know, carvings are old. The conquistadors are about the only person who'd be writing in Roman numerals. Sure,
and why is so?
Yeah, I was just wondering, like, you know, what other culture could it be? And you know, we're back to some of these ancient transatlantic cultural exchange of idea concepts that frequently come up on the show.
Mm-hmm. You know, what are you talking? What, the ancient aliens or?
No, just people from the old world coming to America a long time ago.
Sure, yeah. And what was the reason for the Spanish conquistadors in the first place? What was the whole point of it? They're looking for the 7 cities of gold. Okay, mm-hmm. And I believe it's possible that Phoenix was one of the spots, you know, that they came to looking for the gold. And like I said, there's a lot of conflicting stories. The archaeologists don't want to believe that he ever came this far, this and that. But the rock art and some of the inscriptions out there prove otherwise, you know.
Yeah, so, well, yeah, your information is, you know, expanding our understanding of how far into America conquistadors or, you know, maybe another ancient culture came, you know, penetrated into America's heartland.
Mm-hmm. Right, sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know, I mean, like part of Arizona and all of California all the way up, you know, that was Mexico at one point in time. Mm-hmm. You know, so, yeah. I just think, you know, there's so much evidence, and I just think that the Spanish conquistadors were here. You know, a lot of stuff, a lot of histories here on South Mountain, a lot of things. You know, I'm even finding, you know, dinosaurs. Okay, there's carvings of dinosaurs out here. And there's a stick-figure man with 4 arms, and he's shooting one of those staff weapons at a dinosaur out here. And about 10 years ago, out there in Mesa on the east side of South Mountain, on the east side of Phoenix, they're building a apartment complex, and they find dinosaur bones out there. You know, so it's fascinating. There's so much history out there it took the whole com at least 1,000 years, to do everything. And it's going to take us at least probably another 1,000 years to find everything.
I'm ready for a field trip.
Oh, let's go. I'm waiting for this heat to cool down. I am not one for the heat. That's why I stay indoors during the summer, and it's going to be cooling off soon. And I've got a camera I'm looking at, and I'm going to be picking up real soon. And it's about time to go hunting. Those things are out there right now. I went up on YouTube there, and I posted some recent sightings of the Phoenix Lights here in 2014. And some of the non-sky watchers, some of the average people are out there, filming these lights, they're not telling anybody, they just put them on YouTube, but it's the lights, it's them, and they're here, they're back, and they're going on right now. If you get out there right now, you'll see them, so it's going on.
Yeah, Jeff, since, you don't live all that far away from Mexico, have you seen, personally or in any documentation from Mexico that shows that the ancient visitors treated people in what's now North America and Central America in kind of like the same fashion? Did they have the same experiences? Are the locals portraying the star visitors in the same types of petroglyphs?
Oh, sure, yeah. In Mexico, we see what carvings, what looks like crosses. Okay, we find carvings of crosses out here, not crucifixes, but just like plus signs, like plus cross,
Oh, okay.
And we find them out there in Mexico. We find them out here on South Mountain. It's the same thing, same interpretation. Quetzalcoatl, the flying serpent, the pyramids. There's pyramids out here on Holbrook Trail, right? And it looks like they're a man-made pyramids, they were built from the rocks. It's hard to tell, but that's what it kind of looks like, but clearly there's tons of rock art around these pyramids, and this one rock art actually shows, the two pyramid hills and a creature flying in between them, and then on the bottom is like a type of serpent, and all around these pyramids is flying serpents, and this is what we find in Mexico, these gods, these flying serpent god type things, so not only that, but the altars, there's a lot of altars out here. There was a lot of sacrifice that was going on out here. So,
do you know if it was human sacrifice or animal sacrifice?
I think back in that time, the Mexicans, they're saying that it was, human sacrifice. The conquistadors saw the Mayans out there, or the Aztecs, sacrificing people, and they thought it was, the devil's work and stuff. I'm pretty sure that the same thing was going on over here, So, and it seemed like, the whole time they didn't go to war with anybody. They were, pretty much peace-loving people, but they sacrificed, children and prisoners to these lights for these flying serpents, for these things in the sky that we see today. That's what it's all about. And it's weird too because it's like the Mayans and the Mexicans out there, they weren't very tall. The doorways, are really short, going into these pyramids. And the altars out here aren't that big either. There's photographs on Facebook, and there's photographs on Twitter, I believe. And my son is laying on one of the altars there. And it's about the size, of that, of my son at the time. And he was about, 10 or 11, so real small altar. And it was right there next to a stream, a riverbed, you know, because they would, you know, they would wash, they would clean, they would do their offerings, they would do their little seances or whatever, they would do their little talkings, they would cleanse themselves in the water there before they would perform the sacrifice, you know.
So, well, if the people are doing sacrifices, could that be more evidence that the so-called gods are Nephilim?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think God really wants us to kill other people.
Mm-mm. No, that's what it's all about. You know, these things were cast down. The men at that time, you know, thought these things were God. They worshipped them as gods, you know, and they sacrificed to them. You know, we find a lot of broken pottery out here, okay? And I believe it's prayers. I believe it's urns, okay? And the belief for the Native Americans is everything comes up from the earth shall return back into the earth, okay? And these creatures, they dwell within the earth here, right? They dwell within these rocks out here. And I believe that, like let's just say that we wanted some money. So we would go out there, we would make our own personal pot, and we would put a dollar sign on it, okay? And then we would take it over to that rock where the flying serpent comes and goes from, and we'd pray to this guy and say, hey, you know, I need some money. And we would break that rock as a type of sacrifice, because eventually the pottery shards are going to absorb back down into the dirt. The prayers are going back into the dirt. And I believe that some of these pottery shards we find out here are also urns, right? And they would take the ashes and they would break the pots over the rocks, you know. So their ancestors would be, you know, living with these spirits that dwell in the rocks. This is the reason why we find the pottery shards around petroglyphs.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's some new information to keep in mind. I don't think we've covered anything like that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Sure.
So there was a lot more of the cremations going on than burying the person in their full body.
Yeah. Like you said, there's a lot of cemeteries out there, you know, around South Mountain. I mean, they were, I don't know if they were burying the sacrifices maybe, or I don't know, but it was a grave marker. I found an old map, and it shows where all these cemeteries were around South Mountain, and they're either still there and not told about, or there's golf courses and apartment complexes built on top of them.
So
crazy, huh?
We seen like the movie Poltergeist. There's a commercial about your house being buried on a ancient burial ground, and they're little ghost puppets in the background. Have you noticed any orbs emanating from this apartment complex over the burial ground?
Okay.
Do you think there could be some kind of negative energy from modern actions?
Oh yeah, you know, this is what I've come to believe, living in Phoenix all my life, 44 years, is the closer people live to South Mountain, the more negativity there is in the neighborhood. It's like there's more violence, there's more, you know, it's like bad vibes, you know what I mean? It's like it's
bad
you know, yeah, so you know, one thing I'd like to talk about real quick is that power plant. Okay, I have an old map, right, and it shows where all the hodons were, where all the Indian, ruins were throughout the valley. And it seemed like during the Holocauns day, the spot where that power plant sits today, it was the spot where all the Holocaust used to gather at. That was the main city right there. All right, and it's interesting that now there's a power plant there, and these lights are hanging over the power plant. So it's very possible that the Indians knew that there was some kind of energy right there, and they want, from what I understand, from what I've learned from my research, and what it looks like the Holocaust wanted to live next to these things. They wanted to get as close as they could to these things. Like Montezuma's castle, way up there on a cliff, but right there on the side of it is a huge crack with a big spiral. All right, now the creatures, the entities were coming and going to that side of the rock up there, and not only is it a good spot, for to see if their enemies are coming, but it's also where these creatures are coming and going from, and it just so happens to be way up high. This could explain Machu Picchu. All right, why would they do something way high up on that mountain? Why would they carry all those rocks? Why would they build all that? What's the reason for that? It's because that's where these creatures are.
We're going to have to wait until next time we have you on for the reason to that, because we've reached the end of the show.
Okay, well, it's been a great night. Great night.
Please come back when your book's out.
Oh, definitely. Well, before then.
Oh, sure, yeah. In the next couple months, I should be catching some sightings out there, and when I do, I'll let you guys know. We can talk about it.
All right, folks, I hope you enjoyed tonight's show. Y'all have a good evening.